I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings in the movies, and I'm not proud of my address.
We're not just building muscle, we're building men. In the quiet hours, in the unfiltered moments, in the conversations that happen before the world wakes up. This is The Gloom, where brotherhood forms in the dark so we can lead in the light, where vulnerability is strength and leadership is handed from man to man, one story at a time. Our mission is to empower, exhort, and inspire men to achieve their best selves through stories of reinvigorated male community leadership. We bring you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha packs, ordinary men doing extraordinary things in fitness, fellowship, faith, and leadership, because we believe that every man has a story, and reinvigoration starts when that story is shared. This is The Glue in the Gloom. Shout out to our sponsors, Avior Wealth Management, Liberty Core Real Estate, Major Team Mortgage, Exclusively Eye Care, Omaha Laser Dentistry, and McNamara Law Firm. We appreciate your support. Yo, Gloom listeners, it's the Plague. Let me talk to you about our F3 brother, Amazin, aka Patrick McNamara with McNamara Law Firm, right here in Old Town Elkhorn. Amazin helps small business owners set up their companies, draft and review agreements, and make smart legal decisions so you can focus on growth instead of putting out fires. He also helps families with estate planning, like building living trusts that make sure your kids are ready when the time comes. Don't leave their future to chance. Connect with our brother Amazin today at McNamara Law Firm and put the right plan in place for your business, your family, and your future. Now, let's get back to the gloom. All right. And we're back, or we're live, as I like to say. We're at the Nomad in downtown Elkhorn. I got my man Big Unit. We're just kind of talking before this, and I'm excited to get your story. We've worked out just a handful of times, right, in the gloom. We've been at some Q-Source discussions together. Former leader right at the Whetstone, and just excited to get your story and get to know you a little bit better. So where we'd like to start these off, I think, is just when you think about your EH story, sort of who EH'd you, what was that first workout like, and then how'd you get the name Big Unit?
Yeah, for sure. So my EH story was pretty cool. Robar EH'd me.
Okay.
So we had met through our kids' friends. So like my daughter Peyton and his daughter. Basically they met each other in school, and Ruby obviously is she's very special just because of the fact that she has some personal elements as far as like just dealing with diabetes and that sort of thing, and so Robar was always very open about that and speaking about his daughter, and we had the privileges of getting to know her and understanding kind of like the flows of how to keep track and watch some of the things that she was doing whenever she'd be over at the house. But anyway, we met through that, and then a couple of times as we met and would hang out a little bit, he'd be like, "Hey, do you want to come work out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure," like, and I didn't really know anything. I didn't know anything about F3, but the issue was it was March. So the day that he actually asked me, it was a Monday. He was like, "Hey, I'll come pick you up. We'll go work out on Monday." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. What time do I need to be up?" He's like, I'll pick you up at about 5 after 5. I'm like, 5 after 5. Okay. Yeah, it sounds great or whatever. So, I get up, I look outside, it's snowing, it's super cold, right? So we get in the Jeep, and, I've never ridden with Robar before. I don't know what to expect, but he had this pretty sweet, like, decked out Jeep, and we fly out to the Octagon.
Okay.
Right. Never experienced anything like that. We pull into the parking lot, and then all of a sudden we're walking out, and I find myself just in the middle of like 12 to 14 dudes. I'm like going like, what in the world is this?
Yeah.
And I remember it was Invictus was queuing that day.
Okay.
And the workout was absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember it was looking back at it now, I'm really surprised of just how winded and how tired I was after that first beatdown. But it was a 4-station grinder, and we had a pretty decent little pre thing. It was a ladder pre thing from what I remember.
Okay.
And the beatdown was just brutal. I remember I was just like barely getting to the next station, thinking, how many more exercises do we
Yeah.
have?
When's this gonna be over?
But I'd have to say at that time I was about 265 pounds.
Okay.
So I mean I was a lot bigger than I've ever been.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that fitness was not a part of my life. It was just the fact that like I just wasn't doing the right type of fitness. So I
Sure.
was working out, I was doing a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of heavy bench, a lot of heavy squat,
Mhm.
that sort of stuff. And it was almost like as I was getting bigger, I would just kind of like mask my size with strength. And so
Yeah.
like I'd focus on just, blowing up the shoulders and arms and that sort of thing. So F3 was a game changer. I mean, it really it knocked me out. But I remember that first workout was super tough. And I remember at the end when Invictus, we got around to Namarama, and that's kind of where the fun I think really began because he was just that day he actually was wearing a Los Angeles Dodgers like pullover,
Okay.
and nobody knew anything about me. They didn't know
Yeah.
about baseball or my background or anything like that. So when they asked me, "Hey, tell us some things about yourself," of course I go straight to like the bread and butter,
Yeah.
wife, kids, all the things. And they're like, "Well, tell us something else about yourself." I'm like, I played baseball." And they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, okay, you played baseball. Who'd you play baseball for?" And it was like, "Yeah, I played baseball for like this uh minor league team out in it was like a Texas Louisiana league that we played for." And anyway, we were just talking a bit more, and they said, "Hey, well, where are you from?" I'm from Houston.
Mm.
And then think about it.
Yeah.
What comes to mind when you think about Houston?
Yeah.
And here it is, our first workout. I'm getting trash can. I'm getting like cheaters. I'm getting Altuve. I'm getting like all of these different things. Right?
Yeah.
People were just coming out of the woodworks because they still had so much disdain and anger for the Astros
Yeah.
because of the cheating scandal. But anyway, we're sitting there talking. He goes, "Well, what position did you play?" And I said, "I was a pitcher."
Yeah.
They're like, "Right-handed or left-handed?" I'm like, "Left-handed." And they're like, and then I remember Invictus looked at me and he goes, "Well, you are a big guy."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Big unit." And it
Big
wasn't,
unit.
no one said anything. It wasn't like someone else that brought it to our attention. It was just him on his own.
Nice.
Big unit. And it was like, yep, big unit. And I
Which is
remember,
Randy Johnson, right?
yeah, Randy Johnson.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Left-hand pitcher, pitched for the Houston Astros.
Yeah.
So, for me, I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And then, they always say that like your F3 name just kind of it obviously it embodies you and embodies your personality and so a lot of things. But I remember coming home to my wife and I was like, "Well, honey, I got this name." you know,
She's like, tell me more. Yeah.
she's like, "Oh, great, this is gonna be perfect for your ego."
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was kind of a cool thing just because when I was able to share with family and friends, especially back home in Houston, and also like my brother who lives in Colorado. Whenever I told them my name, it just seemed like everybody was like,
That
"Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, that makes sense. That's perfect."
That
You know?
clicks. Wasn't a lot of explaining. Like some
Yep.
guys are like, "How'd you get that name?"
Yep.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, talk me through kind of your relationship with fitness over the years, because obviously to play baseball at that level, right?
Mhm.
You were in good shape, right? I
Yeah.
don't know. Like, would be curious, like, how'd you get to where you were at before that first F3 workout?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was just through like the type of work that I was in.
Mm.
So I worked in real estate when I was in Houston, working for my family business.
Yeah.
My parents have a brokerage down there,
Oh, cool.
and just being in the office, sitting around all day, sitting in open houses. Obviously having three girls that are young, and you just kind of find yourself become stationary. You find yourself become just a little. Um, you just kind of become part of the norm,
Yeah.
right? The norm of a complacency, the norm of acceptance, the norm of just like, okay, well, hey, this is what you're supposed to do as a middle-aged man is, just and I hate to say that, like, I don't want to sit there and say that I wasn't still physical because I was.
Yeah.
I always worked out, but my go-to was always weights.
Mm-hmm.
Because why does anyone else want to work out and lift weights? Because okay, you lift at weights, you can look big in your shoulders, you can look big in your arms or whatever. You can kind of suck in your stomach or whatever, but
Yeah.
for the most part, it's just a mask,
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, I taught baseball lessons and I worked with a lot of kids in baseball. So I'm sitting on a bucket every day, throwing under toss BP and stuff like that, or
Yeah.
sitting behind an L screen throwing batting practice to hitters. And for the most part, it was very kind of like this stationary type
Mhm.
exercise. I mean, it was good on my arm and, obviously it's benefiting the kids that I'm throwing to, but at the end of the day, it's not really physical,
Right.
And
Right.
so I think whenever getting involved with F3 and really kind of diving in that first year, I mean, I went from 160 pounds down to 217.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
mean, it was pretty incredible, and I think it took longer than a year to get there, but I remember I was just like, you wouldn't quite recognize it until other people told you, like,
Yeah.
"Hey, big unit, dude, you're looking kinda good, man. What's
Yeah.
going on? Like, what are you doing?" I'm like,
Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm just kinda
Yeah.
going with the flow."
Oh, that's awesome.
But I also think I really bought in the very beginning. I really bought
Mhm.
into, "Hey, you can work out 6 days a week." And
Mhm.
if you and once when we first started with Saturdays, I started to go with Dragon's Lair first. I never went to
Oh, yeah.
Octagon, so I never experienced the double workout. I only experienced the single.
Mhm.
But then once we started going to Octagon, then it was like, "Oh, cool. So now I can go 2 on Saturdays and really
Yeah.
get that little extra jump as far as an extra workout is concerned."
I love it. It's so cool just to hear, and I think it is funny, right? You don't really realize it. You're just like
Yeah.
showing up, right, and doing whatever the workout is. It's also, I think, a little bit of a testament to like, and I'm sure maybe you hit some coupon sites, but body weight
Mhm.
stuff is actually really good for us.
Oh, calisthenics is incredible, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm getting more into weights now as I'm just posting less with the age of our kids, but I think it's still like I posted this morning, right? When we're doing a bunch of burpees and different styles of push-ups, and you're sort of like, wow, this is just as hard, if not more,
Mhm.
than sitting up and doing some presses, which I think is really cool. I think the benefit of body weight is just easy. But
Yeah, totally.
talk me through what happened with the baseball career. I would be curious, like, did
Yeah.
you get injured or any?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I was actually talking to, a lady about that this morning. It was interesting, like, her husband, who also name was Brad and was also a pitcher, they're a rep that we're working with, that they live in Arkansas.
Okay.
And I'm sort of talking to her about that, and she's like, "So what happened to you?" And I was like, "Okay, well, yeah, baseball was just kind of one of those continuations."
Mm,
My story is kind of crazy. I wish I could say that it was this amazing story of, high school this high school prospect that that went to college and was looked at by a bunch of different people and stuff, but it wasn't that at all.
mm,
So I grew up in a 5A school that was very, very competitive baseball wise. I was able to finally make the baseball team my senior year of high school.
oh, wow.
At
This is
which,
down in Houston.
yeah, this is down in
Yeah.
Houston, yeah,
Okay. Yep.
Jersey Village. And it was it was an uphill battle the whole way through. So my coach was very opinionated, very political with the players that he wanted to have on his team at all times.
Okay.
And I basically just kind of bulldozed my way in there. I was like, "Look, I'm going to play for this team. Like, I've worked
Mhm.
too hard. I want to play for this team." And he's like, "Well, if you want to play for this team, you're going to have to earn it." Even as a senior, I threw batting practice like every single day.
Wow.
I mean, and it was one of those things where, um, that's what made me a good player because I was constantly throwing every
Mm,
single day. And then, you know, really, my baseball career didn't start until I was in college. So the
okay.
first time I ever pitched in a competitive, like in an actual game type situation outside of high school was in college.
Okay.
So I went to a little junior college just right outside of Houston called San Jacinto Junior College.
Okay.
So it was a JUCO. It was a really well known JUCO.
Okay.
I mean, they had guys like Andy Pettit, Roger Clemens, a bunch of those guys actually went to school there.
Okay. So
And
so a lot of prospects out
yeah,
there.
and
Yeah.
the year that I was there, they just changed coaches. So they brought this guy in, Chris Rupp, that came in, was the head coach, and he didn't really have any prospects or anything, right? So here I'm at this school, and they had open tryouts, and they're like, "Here, come try out." So I went and I tried out, and at that time, dude, I was throwing gas. I could just arm was like so
What's the
strong.
fastest you ever threw?
So, on radar, 93 miles an hour. That
Wow.
was but then also if you take it back to 1997, 1998, I mean, that was
Yeah.
a big difference, especially being from the left side. So,
Yeah.
three-quarter slot, just said, yeah, I threw
Yeah.
I threw fairly hard. But baseball kind of, like, took a back seat. My parents got divorced. We ran into a lot of
Mm,
family issues and stuff, and so then I kinda had to take a different position
mm,
as kind of being the caretaker of my younger brother Matt, my younger brother Craig.
Okay.
So we had to kind of get situated as far as some different living conditions and that sort of thing.
Mm.
And then if you were to fast forward, I'd say about 2 or 3 years, I moved out to Colorado just to kind of get away from Texas and Houston. Had nothing to do with baseball at all.
Mm.
For the most part, I was just kind of living the fast life.
Yeah.
And then whenever I got to when I got to Colorado, I was asked to play like an invitational softball tournament,
Oh, okay. It's
right?
like
Just
an
like just
intramural
something.
kind of thing, or
Yep,
like a
yep,
not,
just
yeah.
something fun. Weren't
Yeah.
thinking about anything, but it's just like it was just a fun deal. And during that time, I was just out having fun. So I think I had some fun. I threw a couple of guys out at home plate, threw a
Mm.
guy out second from the outfield, and then had some fun hitting balls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then after the game, I was approached by a guy, and he was like, "Hey, where did you play baseball?" Because I mean, it was they could see obviously that I had the skill set.
Yeah.
And then that got me into the Colorado Capitals. Colorado Capitals is a semi-pro baseball team that's in Denver.
Wow.
And I went to a tryout. I made the team. And then all of a sudden, I was playing baseball for a semi-pro team in Denver,
That's
right?
wild.
And so
Oh,
here we're doing this. It's kind of fun, and I always kind of had like this idea that baseball was going to be kind of like my thing. I always wanted to be a professional player. And so I just kind of stuck with it, and I started to play in a lot of different showcases. I started to go to a lot of different tryouts, and then just over time, I went from playing in this particular league into playing in a couple of Mexican leagues into playing into Texas Louisiana League, and that's where I
okay.
got involved with like United League, which was the Financial Colts who I actually played professional baseball with.
Okay.
And then they were a non-affiliate, but they were affiliated with like the Detroit Tigers and the Chicago White Sox.
Okay,
And
like a feeder team kind
yeah,
of thing?
so
Okay.
kind of like a feeder team, but not. So like think about like the Lincoln Salt Dogs.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not necessarily tied in, but you basically can kind of pick guys out of there if you need to. Like,
Mhm.
hey, here's a guy,
Yeah.
like you can pick him out. And so that was kind of a cool experience, because I mean, I went from a kid that was basically like really had no real identity in baseball outside of the fact that it was something I always wanted to do
Right.
to slowly just kind of making my way up to a professional level.
Yeah. And were these like paid
Huh?
teams so you're kind of like a minor league
Yeah,
experience, right?
my first check was like $617.
Okay,
Yep.
nice.
Yeah.
Making the big bucks, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean,
That's
just
awesome.
the overall experience was really cool. Like it
Yeah.
was a lot of fun.
I bet.
I was able to show myself that I could get to that level.
Yeah.
And looking back, like being a professional athlete, like that's something that I know that no one could ever take that away from me.
Yeah.
Like that was my own accomplishment. That was something that I strived to do, and it was something that I was able to do. And even now, like having the opportunity to like we play in a men's league here in Omaha, like
Yeah.
with like Wentworth and with Turtle and Storm. Wow, why can't I think of um, Jeff Klein, Storm
Oh,
Chaser.
yeah.
And there's a couple other guys too that play,
Nice.
and just even being in that environment, it's still fun. Like it's still fun to to compete.
I bet.
Yeah,
That is so cool.
yeah.
I as a former, so I think we've talked a little bit, right? I tore my rotator cuff as a sophomore in high school, and
Yeah.
so then never had never got to go beyond there, and never really recouped after surgery. But definitely had some friends that, went to double A, triple A, and tried to kind of chase that dream. I actually just found my girls just found this old baseball when we were 12. We won this World Series. And I had the whole team sign it. Well, Darren Ruff was on my team, so
Heck yeah.
I'm going to try to, they're
Yeah.
like, I don't know if it's worth anything, but I was going to reach out to Darren and just say, hey, I found this. I don't know if you remember, but
I think that's the coolest thing about it. And
Yeah.
what's really even now, like the short time that I was in, organized baseball, like even the people that I've met and that I still know, like it's such a small circle.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's one of the things that really drew me to F3 was just the fact that like there's that sense of camaraderie, there's that sense of brotherhood, there's that sense of team
Mhm.
that that you see. Because like when you show up in the mornings and it's the same guys showing up, and you're like, hey, I got to be accountable to this. I need to make sure that I'm
Yeah.
getting out there because pretty sure there's somebody that's like leaning on me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There was so much to F3 that like really, really caught my attention. Yeah.
So you feel like after that first workout, you were hooked? Do you remember sort of how you progressed through the different AOs, or
Yeah.
where'd you go Tuesday and the rest of the week? Do you remember?
So yeah, well, obviously, he took me to Octagon first,
Yeah.
so I really wasn't too familiar with like the whole kind of like layout of F3 as far
Yeah.
as like the different sectors and like where we're supposed to work out and that sort of thing. And
Sure.
also too, the apps weren't there, so we
Yeah.
didn't have the capabilities that we
Yeah,
have
there was
now.
no packs in
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Because you've been in F3 4 years?
Yeah, almost. Yeah, three and a half
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. It's been as long as it has been. But I would say that when I first started, Octagon was Mondays.
Yeah.
Tuesdays were Trident.
Hmm.
And then Wednesdays, that's where I was like, oh, you can work out on Wednesdays too. Well, where can I go work out on a Wednesday? Red Wings.
Oh yeah.
So, or
for
top rope, top
Yeah.
rope. Sorry.
Yeah.
So top rope, and that's where I really felt like I kind of started to really become pretty consistent as far as always making that Wednesday workout. And the reason being is because it was so close to the house.
Yeah.
So then Thursdays, I didn't really experience anything with Thursdays until like I finally went out and checked out the maze. But like Friday, Armory was where I started.
Yeah.
I think about a lot of the guys I met, even like some of their first workouts, like Tea Party,
Yeah.
and a few others that come to mind. But I think like the starting off with Kaki's Cafe at the Octagon on Mondays, I was just blown away by the experience because here we are, a bunch of grown men, like after workout, sitting around drinking coffee, and it was like, man, this like reminds me of like being in college and just like instead of being at like a party where you're sitting around drinking a bunch of beers and stuff, it's like we're sitting out, we're drinking coffee in the cold morning, with a bunch of like really cool guys you're able to get to know. And that was always kind of a big goal of mine. I always wanted to try to go out and meet like one person every day.
Nice.
So, and I found that F3 made it so simple. It was never a thing where it was like, I'd go to introduce myself and then kind of get the crickets. It was more like, hey man, what's up? Tell me about yourself. Like what's, so there was always this like back and forth that I really appreciated. And that was something that, man, I remember like one of the first COTs that I ever gave, I just talked about how much I appreciated the uninterrupted time that F3 possesses.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, like we're working out so early, we're out doing hard things so early, but then it's just like, it doesn't impede with anything else.
Right.
You don't have to worry about like getting home at a certain time or like being, somewhere for your kids or it's your time.
Yeah.
And that for me, I feel like now being a part of F3 for 3 years, I feel like maybe I've taken that for granted a little bit, but it's always a good reminder to go back to.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, man, I love the time that this gives me.
Yeah. Yeah. There is this mystery of like, for whatever reason, it goes by so quick. It's like it's like the quietest time. I'm always amazed. I'm like, man, if my work day could go by this fast, I would appreciate that. But
don't
really
you find
cool.
it crazy, like how, as you become part of like this like daily rhythm, just how much you just long for even more time?
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, I can go do a pre-run at 4:45, or I can do a Smurf, or whatever. If you're a 5:15 beatdown or a 5:30 beatdown, it's just like getting up super early, being there. Then after the workout, grabbing coffee. Then after coffee, it's like you come home, you start your daily rhythms at home, and then all of a sudden you're in you're in your full work mode, full day.
Yep.
And it's just like, I could totally use like another hour. I could totally be good if we had another hour.
Yeah. I love it. Talk me through. So when you think about like from a physical fitness standpoint, how are you doing today? Do you feel like you've hit some goals, or what are you working on? What's in that space for you?
Yeah. So I think that, I think I have done pretty well. Man, I'm gonna have to fall on the sword though. I think I've done also, I've kind of got a little lazy. I think I've lost some of the momentum that I originally had. I did suffer a couple injuries, so I pulled my groin pretty bad, and that was really hard to come back from.
How'd you do that?
Seesaw.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Working out for 3 hours straight? Right?
No, dude, like high stepping through snow.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it happened. And I remember I
Shoot.
kept trying to, it was the seesaw that was out in Papillion. And I tried to, what was that, 24, 23.
Yeah, 23.
Yeah,
And that was
23.
brutal. That was where it like snowed a
Yeah.
ton, like the night before.
Yeah. And I mean, it was, and we started off the first leg, it was great. And then the second leg, we were running back up because we would meet at the football field, but you would go up through like there was a couple of hills and stuff. And I remember I was just kind of like high, basically just like high stepping it through the field. And I mean, I just pulled it so bad. And I remember, I mean, I could barely walk to finish the workout.
Mm.
And that injury was probably one of the things that really was kind of started a little bit more of the downfall for me.
Mm,
Just
mhm.
because I couldn't like open up, I couldn't sprint, I couldn't do the things that I like to do.
Yeah.
Um, but fast forwarding, I'd say now, like, started a 300 challenge.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Uh, it's been a bear, dude.
Yeah.
Like, that's been
Yeah.
really, really tough. Like, it's one thing to do the 300 push-ups during the workout, but if you're having to do it throughout the day, I mean, like, I've noticed a lot of, it's really just kind of like put a lot of stress on my shoulders and stuff.
Mm,
And so
mhm.
I'm still trying to do them, but I had to take a few days off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you injure the shoulder playing baseball at all,
Yeah,
or
so,
yeah.
type 2 slap tear, tore labrum. Yep,
Okay.
and, I was actually telling the story this morning too again. What's crazy about that is, whenever I tore at my last year of playing baseball was the same year I met my wife, Kelly,
Oh, interesting.
and so she was gonna be moving up to San Angelo to stay with my host family,
Mm.
but it was, like, right before that we had a road trip and I was in Arlington, and I was on it was like a 2 inning from what I remember, it was a 2 inning, just, short relief, and the second inning that I came in, it was like the 4th or 5th pitch in the inning. It just felt like someone just took a knife and just, like, stabbed me in
Oh.
the shoulder. I remember I called times, the pitching coach came out, and I was just like, I'm done, dude. I can't do anything." And, you would think that like, "Oh, okay, well, they're gonna make sure you're okay," and stuff like that, but in that type of environment, it's like, "Hey, well, we appreciate you."
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for coming out, like,
Right.
and so, yeah, so we went through real competitive rehab first
Mm.
because when they first did the first look at it, they couldn't tell that there was any, like, real separation from the labrum,
Oh, wow.
just because it's basically just it's a real thin piece of tissue,
Right,
right?
right.
And so once we went through the rehab and everything, I threw one just like a simulated start,
Mm.
and then I felt great. Velo was there and everything. Next day, couldn't lift my arm.
Oh, wow.
So then from there, we went back in and looked at it again. They did the dye, and then they found the reason why they couldn't see it was because the entire labrum was completely detached from the bone.
Oh, so they're looking for a tear,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
weren't seeing a tear because it was just
right, because it was
wow.
completely gone.
How
So
so
they,
they reattach with, like,
yep.
cadaver or something, or
I
they
don't know.
or they
Honestly, I don't know what they did.
okay.
I think the tendon itself, I think, was in good enough shape where he was able to reattach it.
Wow.
And then I went through extensive rehab. And the crazy thing now is like I can throw. I can
Mm.
throw. I can't throw as hard as I could,
Yeah.
but I can throw really with no pain. I have no pain at all,
Interesting.
which is kind of crazy. And even at 46 years old, I love the fact that I can still do that. Like I can
Yeah. Yeah.
still throw with conviction.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Walk me through and maybe this wasn't the case for you, but I remember, injury was in high school, but I remember just as a young man, just a lot of my identity and dreams were tied up in that sport, and
Right.
then when I got injured and realized I couldn't play anymore, it was just this, it was the first of what would be many, identity crises for me. But I don't know, like, how did you work through that? Or was that a challenge for you at all as you realized baseball was sort of over?
I think that's an amazing question because absolutely. I mean, I think that, my whole life growing up was as a baseball player.
Hmm.
I mean, all my friends knew I played baseball at, guys that even like one of my best friends, Jordan Hook, who we both played together. He was one of those guys where he was just like, you're really good, Brad, but like you're not that good. I think you should probably focus on doing something else
Oh,
type thing,
wow.
like out of love, like, and
Yeah.
this guy was huge. He reminded me of almost like a Kurt Schilling type,
Uh-huh.
like very impressive, hard throwing right hander, but also too, but just like, and I just didn't believe in that. I didn't believe in, the fact that like someone else was going to tell me like who or what I could be.
Mm.
And then also too, I think a lot of like my identity really was centered around the fact that like I felt like I was always doing it on my own. Like I didn't have the support of like my parents. Like
Yeah.
my dad was just kind of like completely uninvolved when it came to baseball, but it was
Mm,
also they were working through like their own things and stuff. But I would say that after baseball was over, it was very hard for me to be like, okay, now I'm just going to turn into like this like normal everyday guy. I'm going to go and talk to like all my friends that are working, that are doing all the things they're doing, and try to see if I can kind of get caught up in the mix with all of that. Which I did, but
mhm,
it was, yeah, it was very, very tough.
mm,
Even to the point to where it's like, um, I struggled with just like the habits of just like always wanting to be around baseball.
yeah,
And when we had our girls, I have 3 girls,
yeah,
and I was out teaching baseball lessons every single night,
mm,
and wanting to be around the game as much as possible. Being around kids and coaching them and stuff, and still being looked at as an athlete.
mm,
Whereas now I still coach from time to time,
yeah,
and I clearly don't look like that athlete
yeah,
anymore. It's not like they don't look at me and they're like, "Oh, wow, like he's an athlete." They're just like, "Oh,
yeah,
he's a dad.
yeah,
He's just
yeah,
a normal
which is
guy."
way cooler, by the way,
Yeah, oh,
right? To just
100%.
be, yeah,
But honestly, on the flip side of it, I'm really thankful for the fact that like God gave me an opportunity to explore other avenues.
yeah,
To explore true purpose with, like my wife Kelly and our girls.
mm,
The fact that like just how intentional we try to be with our kids, with our family, just when you think about F3 and you think about just the core values of F3, the Centrica, focusing on your M and your 2.0s, and just the fact that like the embodiment of how important F3 makes that.
yeah,
I think it's really cool because that's something that I felt like I already had before I joined F3.
yeah,
And I feel like it's a piece that I'm able to bring to maybe help others, just like in like little small
yeah,
measures.
oh, heck
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's so cool, and I think it's so important, right? Because we all have, I'm sure, or at least many of us, at least from guys I've talked to, right? Like there's something, right, that we sort of thought we would be doing, and then
Hmm.
there's like this pivot or these moments of like, now I got to rethink, sort of who I am. And I think what I'm learning is like my who I am doesn't change as much as the world would like me to think it does. It's
Yep.
it's just the thing that God has me doing, right?
Hmm.
Seems to change, but like who I am, if I can remember, right, I keep that sort of secure and rooted in him, which I know is something I've appreciated a ton about you, just your faith and the
Hmm.
perspective you provide there. But before we get too far in the faith stuff, talk me through, like, because you mentioned, thinking about the fellowship piece,
Hmm.
you mentioned coming into the group and sort of this, like, okay, this is what it was like to be back with the team or with the guys. You're a pretty outgoing guy. Was it difficult to build relationships, or did you find that it would just come natural to you, or how'd you go about making some friends in the gloom as you were getting
Yeah.
getting to know the guys?
No, I think it kind of just came very,
Hmm.
very, very naturally.
Yeah.
I think one of the coolest things that I guess that I was able to be a part of is just the fact that like of other people's um kind of like other people's viewpoint of me.
Yeah.
Like where it's like, okay, you're kind of looking out, hey, I want to meet this guy, I want to meet this guy, I want to spend time with these different people and stuff. But then all of a sudden just be you walk out and they're like, "Hey, what's up, big unit?" Like where it's
Yeah.
all of a sudden now it's like, "Hey, I think you'd be really good if you did this," or "I think it'd be good if you should lead a workout. You should do these types of things." And I'd even think about like the different sites that I was a part of where I was started to be asked about, "Hey, have you thought about the opportunity of leading a site?"
Hmm.
And some of the conversations I had with different people, and even being part of some of um the weekly events as far as going out meeting for happy hours, not really happy hours. I was always a part of like the lunches and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but just like listening to some of the guys saying like, "Hey man, like this is something I think you should really think about doing." And so it would just kind of be there in the back of your mind going like, "Oh, maybe I should," you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
But as far as building the relationships, no, I feel like, you know, uh, to to really speak honestly, I feel like I was so in it. I was so involved initially, but then, we didn't really have you really can't control a lot of the other things that kind of happened. Like I had some interesting turbulence with like work and that sort of thing,
Mm.
which tend to pull me away from the gloom. It pulled me away from some of the workouts because I had to put my focus elsewhere. But getting back into like 2023 was a tough year, but then like getting past 2023 and into 2024, and then given the opportunity to run a site, that's where things really started to kind of take a different direction for me because there was the accountability piece that was there,
Mm,
and then there was also just that sense of just like, hey, like we can do something with this. Like
yeah.
let's be a little bit more intentional. Let's see what I can do with these guys, and maybe I could pray a little bit, and I can ask God to like really like intercede and guide me into some of these directions and what what He's calling me to.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. I am curious, at what point in your F3 journey did you go to your first Q source? Because I feel like that's something that you maybe
Mhm.
gravitated towards. But what was that like?
Yeah. So Q source always, ironically, it was always at Whetstone.
Yeah,
And so one of the first Q sources I ever went to, that was T-ball. It was his first year whenever he actually started Whetstone, and the reason why I liked it was because it was so close to the house.
yeah, yep,
And we had a lot of the same guys that were coming working out at that point in time. Like a couple guys that come to mind, obviously like T-ball, long neck, OG. These guys were there. They were just like constant figures, almost like you would go and you're like guaranteed to see those guys there.
yeah,
And then also kind of getting introduced to pre-running and that sort of thing, which has never been my strong suit and never will be. I do my best,
yeah,
and that's one of my biggest goals is really working on just running in
yeah,
general, just really getting comfortable running. But like being around those guys and just kind of seeing the example that they presented was pretty keen.
mm,
And then obviously having long neck come to me and say, "Hey, what's your thoughts on this? Like, what's your thoughts on maybe taking this and running with it?" And I remember at the time I was just like, "Yeah, dude, we can totally do this." Like, I
yeah,
I I don't think I had any hesitation because I really enjoyed Source. I really enjoyed the fact that it was a bunch of guys that were open to be vulnerable,
yeah,
but the vulnerability wasn't like forced, and that's the thing. I feel like F3 just does such a good job about like even the way that like there's no uh there's it- it's like when you think about like your identity, it's not you as Brad or you as Brandon. It's
mhm,
it's the plague and big unit, right? And
yeah,
it's all these other people that it's not based off of them personally, it's just based off of what they want to share, and
yeah,
we just know them as
mhm,
their as their F3 name.
yeah,
And so I feel like that opens up a lot of opportunity. I feel like there were times where guys maybe weren't 100% about wanting to share, but I just recognized it was something really cool.
yeah,
And one of the things that Longneck did really good was like he was just so good about just it's almost like this stoic nature of just being able to like sit back and just like watch the room and
mm,
watch how guys interacted. And then he had a great way of like kind of interjecting and maybe adding a little piece here and there. And when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, I could do this all day long.
yeah,
My background obviously with work and stuff has always been within building teams and groups and that sort of thing. And so
yeah,
I've always been kind of in the driver's seat when it comes to, hey, tell me about yourself. But then obviously, if there's something that's not in line, I can always kind of come in and add into it,
yeah,
sort of thing.
yeah.
And so I felt really comfortable once I was given that opportunity to lead that way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. And there's so many different leadership opportunities within F3 that
Mhm.
each guy can kind of gravitate right to where they're skilled or maybe where they don't have skills yet and develop those, which is awesome. For guys that maybe haven't been to Q Source, maybe just give sort of high level like what's that all about or why
Yeah.
should a guy check it out?
Man, Q source is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, like one, the way it's set up in four quadrants, the way that it's so simplistic,
Mm,
but I think it's just kind of like that golden nugget for the week,
yeah.
right? Q source is great because if you actually go to it week upon week, you can see the structure that F3 presents and the way that they really want to just help men see the opportunities that maybe they've never seen before within how they handle things, how they work, the relationships with their spouses, with their kids. How important God is. I mean, like, and obviously F3 stands for faith, fellowship, and fitness. That faith component is not to be subjected for just one belief system,
Yeah.
but just the fact that like it's it's been really important for uh, for Q source to speak about how important the faith
Mhm.
is huge.
Yeah.
You know, I think about some of the conversations that I've had with multiple people in that space, and then just how giving them basically an open opportunity to obviously hear about something new that they've never heard before, but then also be able to speak into that is incredible.
Yeah.
Like really, really good stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
I often just I think it's just such a cool space because a lot of guys, I think you get to this point in life where you're maybe, depending on your relationship with the church or with organized religion or whatever it might be, you're sort of unsure, but you're also kind of searching, but you don't feel comfortable going, walking into a church to do that searching. And so then we create this space where barrier to entry is really low. There's zero judgment and a bunch of guys that could share their experience,
Hmm.
and so then you just have this great dialogue with guys that I've never had somebody walk into our church and sort of ask the questions that some guys have asked me in the gloom. And it's just such a cool opportunity to share life, with guys, which is amazing.
I think that's really cool to point out too, because I think that there's a lot of even members of the church that I've spoken to that are at high levels, and when I get a chance to tell them about Q source, and they stop me and they're like, "Whoa, tell me more."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
4 quadrants? Like,
Yeah.
how do you
Yeah.
so then now it starts to kinda get their wheels turning where they're like, "How do we implement that into our own Bible study practice?
Yeah.
How do we create, like, less stagnation and more opportunity and more productivity within these, like, circles that, that Bible studies are?" Because it's just like when you're sitting in a room with a bunch of guys and everyone's just kinda sitting around like they have to be there
Yeah.
and there's no glue,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
When you create that glue and you give them something sticky that they can actually like, "Hey, I can go to that.
Yeah.
I can focus on that." I think that's what's really, really cool about QSort.
I love it.
Yeah.
I one time I had my wife read one of the Q source. They're like articles, right, or kind of like blog posts, and just remember her feedback was like, I was like, "You got to read this. This is perfect. Like this makes so much sense to me." And she's like, "It's kind of repetitive," and I'm like, "Maybe that's what we need as
Mhm.
guys. Right? We need to tell me the same thing, and 3 times in a row in a little bit different flavor." But thinking about the Concentrica, would
Mhm.
love to get your thoughts on just sort of the relationships in that space. So it sounds like you met your wife kind of as you were coming out of your baseball career.
Mhm.
You've got 3 girls. Tell us a little bit about them if you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So 3 girls, my pals, Peyton, Addie, Lily.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
So Peyton, she actually turned 16 on Thursday.
Oh, so is she driving?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're kind of like getting ready for that whole piece,
Yeah.
which is going to be fun. And then so Peyton, she's 16 years old. She is really involved in dance and ballet and
Okay.
all that stuff. They dance for Bloom, so I'm not sure if
Oh
you're familiar
yeah.
with Bloom
Yeah,
Dance
that's where we
Academy.
yeah, that's where we're at. Yeah.
Perfect.
Love it.
So I'm not sure if you knew about Nutcracker, but we just got finished performing. So Kelly,
Uh,
me, Peyton, and Lily, our youngest, who's 10, we all performed at the Nutcracker. So
oh, that's
me
awesome.
and Kelly were party parents. So we were actually Clara's parents in the Nutcracker.
Okay.
And then Peyton, she had multiple roles. She was in the Spanish dance, and she was also a rat in the
Are you talking the one that was at the Orpheum?
yeah, or not the Orpheum, the one that
The
was at
the
Bloom.
one that Bloom did.
Yeah, the one
Okay.
that Bloom did.
Okay,
Yep.
got it. Cool. That's
Yep, so it's
awesome.
my 2nd year doing it. It's been a really, really cool
So
thing.
you're a dance dad. You're all in,
Uh-huh.
huh? I love
Yeah.
it. That's awesome.
Yeah, in fact, like, Biscuits actually reached out to me and was like, "Hey, nice job. I know you're that light on your feet, big unit."
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Talk me through. I was just so we just did an episode with Canadian Bacon, and we,
Uh-huh.
we were talking about the just this opportunity as dads, and we kind of went on a tangent specifically about dads of girls being able to sort of create an example of who they're gonna marry someday, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know, talk me through that, your experience as a dad and sort of what that's been like for you.
So I think, like, going back to Peyton, obviously Peyton's 16, and then my middle daughter, Addie, is 14. She'll be 15 in February, and they are now kind of, like, joining that space where they're starting to be interested in boys. They're starting to talk more to boys. They have, not so much at school, it's mostly youth group.
Yeah.
So we go to City Light West, and which is, right next to Bloom.
Okay.
But they're real involved with like their youth groups and stuff. I'm real involved in youth groups, so I teach sophomores and up, so basically 10th through 12th grade.
Okay. Nice.
And I don't know, just like being in that position to where it's like, I gotta say, I mean, the kids nowadays are a lot different from, when we were kids. I feel
Mhm.
like we grew up really fast. I feel like we're adulting so quickly,
Yeah.
whereas like kids now seem to have a little bit more of a space where they want to stay kids and they want to stay young.
That's good. I've been praying for that. No.
Yeah. Yeah. And like so like with Peyton and Addie, they really haven't like been into that. But as far as like what they're looking for in a future husband, we just try to embody of I don't know, just like a position of what a good husband looks like and what a good wife looks like by the way that we model ourselves as husband and wife in our home.
Yeah.
Um and it's not perfect all the time,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
like I'd be lying to you if I said that that wasn't that we weren't that we didn't have our struggles because we do, but I also think it's important that kids see like what effective, I guess discussions look like.
Yeah.
We're not big fans of like um really like these like drag down arguments and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Like
Mhm.
typically it's going to be squashed pretty quick and we're going to move on to, that next point. But, to speak to like the girls and just their overall growth, like I want to be an example to them to where it's like they're not they're not looking for something outside of who their dad is and the person that they want to be
Mhm.
with, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
I want them to be with somebody that is intentional. I want them to be with somebody that's fun. I want someone that has good personality that laughs about the silly things,
Yeah.
but also focuses on the important things of life. That religion and a faith walk is not taboo, but that it's essential and that it's something that is an embodiment of kind of like who they are as people. And if we can, if Kelly and I can make that happen, and we that obviously is going to be one of our biggest goals.
Yeah. I love it. It's
Yeah.
it's so cool. And I would be curious as you're thinking about some of the other roles in that Concentrica, so like
Mhm.
shield lock, whetstone. Have
Yep.
you any chance to participate or engage in those?
So Shield Lock, we had a couple. We were a part of a few, but man, it's what's so hard about that is really just kind of creating that space of availability.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you knew about this or not, but Bogey and I, we actually were thinking about, okay, how can we create a space for other packs that maybe can't be available for like
Yeah.
the morning discussions for Q Source to where
Yeah.
they could actually come like later on during the evenings. We actually we did one little launch where we had one get together.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's anything we're going to stop doing, but I think to speak to the whetstone and speak to shield lock, it's just like really creating that availability.
Mm-hmm.
And then also like finding the right people to shield lock with.
Yeah.
Um I I honestly have not really dove into an actual group yet.
Yeah.
I feel like that'll come and maybe if, like through this interview or this discussion that maybe some other guys will see that and be like, hey, I'll reach out and
Yeah.
see if that can work. But I think you also have to be mindful of where you are in life and like where you are with your kids and that sort of thing. Where if an opportunity presents itself, then obviously it's important because shield lock is very important.
Mm-hmm.
For the guys that I've spoken to that have had a long standing meeting with each other, you can see the massive benefits from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like Q Source is kind of like a microcosm of that because
Totally.
it's like we can hold each other accountable, but it's really almost I'm not going to say it at face value, but it's not as in depth and it's not as where you're a shield lock. I mean that's a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
You think about some of the discussions and conversations that men will have within those circles,
Yeah.
and those are very like sacred areas because I
Mm-hmm.
mean a lot of men struggle with a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for men to have a place where they can speak about those things. Because there's some things I don't know if you've ever seen some of those funny videos where the woman is just like, I have all this pressure and it's just this thing or whatever. And he's like, well, it's the nail that's in your head. You got to pull that out of your,
Yes, I have seen that. Yeah.
and but really I feel like that's what I'm getting at though. It's like
Yeah.
there's only a certain level that you can really communicate with maybe your spouse, even though we're supposed to be able to communicate
Yeah.
effectively to have that space where you can speak to another man and be
Mhm.
extremely vulnerable,
Yeah.
or to be extremely open about something,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. I mean, as men, we're expected to do so much,
Yeah.
from how we're supposed to provide for our families, how we're supposed to be, like, all of these different things.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a space where you can talk to somebody about it.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I've really appreciated is, like, sometimes it's me complaining, and it's my guys in my shield lock that will call me out and be like, "You need to stop." Like, "You're not like, you're being you're not being realistic," or whatever,
Hmm.
and I think just, like, kind of wrestling with life, whereas if I go to my wife with all of those things, I'm
Yeah.
likely to start a bunch of arguments that are just really, like, things I've created in my head,
Right.
so having that space is key. I also think, one of the things we started doing in the Northwest, which is just ridiculous, you kind of mentioned this earlier, is like, we just want more of this time, but we kind of substituted a pre-run for a pre-book study,
Heck yeah.
and that's actually been, so we started at 4:30, but it's actually been, because, like, well, when do any of us have time?
Right.
Like, we all want to engage. We know these things will make us better, and so we just said, okay, I'm willing to give up a pre-run on the fitness side to grow a little bit more on the faith side,
For
and
sure.
it's been amazing. And so we're looking at, now we got 12 guys have kind of gotten pulled into this thing, and so it's like, well, how do we expand that? But
I think it's
yeah,
cool. And again, it's that iron sharpens iron,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
it goes back to just like that, like the proverb of saying like, hey, like these things are important.
mhm,
Men need this space.
yeah.
Um, what book are you guys reading?
Right now, Wild at Heart. So
Nice,
we've
dude.
done
Yeah.
Titus 10. We did Meaning of Marriage, which was a little bit too. It is a Tim Keller book, so a little
Hmm.
bit wordy for a lot. A little, he's kind of like academic
Right.
in his writing, and now we're on.
John Eldridge is great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what's been so cool is, I think it's same thing in F3. Like, nobody is showing up there, like, saying it. Everybody must agree. It's just like, we're able to read and then just reflect on this thing together, and ultimately you just leave feeling supported and
Hmm.
loved and filled up, and maybe with a couple ideas of, like, okay, I need to add this to my list of things to do to
For
be
sure.
be 1% better. So it's been really cool. Are you or someone you know in the market to buy a new home? Well, if so, check out Major Team Mortgage. They specialize in home purchase and refinance home loans. Their mission is to purposely empower people to experience their good life through building wealth with real estate. Showing up in the gloom is no different than showing up for a conversation around your future of building wealth with real estate. Join the action economy and get in the game with Sasquatch. Text or call John at 402-212-0149 to schedule a time today. Individual NMLS number 1393750. Company NMLS number 2478164. Equal housing lender. But
Heck yeah.
talk me through. We've kind of been talking around the faith piece, but I would love to hear, like, what's been your journey? Like, is faith always been a part of your life, or was that something that kind of came in later, or what's that been like? And then would love to hear also, like, how F3 has maybe helped with that
Yeah, for sure.
journey.
So yeah, so faith has always been probably something pretty regular in my life.
Yeah.
Not necessarily from both of my parents. I always kind of make the joke like my family was kind of like The Simpsons, like where Marge would take the kids to church, and like Homer would sit in the back and make fun of
Yeah.
the pastor, or he would just like sleep in or whatever.
Yeah.
And so my dad was never really big on church at all. Like anytime that he would have to go, it was like it was just always kind of like a tug of war match to see them
Mm,
there. Whereas like my mom and my aunt, so my aunt Betty, who really was a huge proponent for church and was one of the biggest,
cool.
I guess, people in my life that really like brought me to the Lord.
Mm,
Um, was was she was steadfast. Like she would pick us up on the weekends and we'd go to church, and that's kind of what we did. Obviously, with church not being at the full front whenever I was first born, I actually made the choice to be baptized when I was 12 years old.
okay. Cool.
So of course, it wasn't as hyped up as it is now. It's like
Yeah.
now you've got like full on like,
Yeah.
carnival setting or
Yeah.
whatever. It's just like,
Yeah.
and so then it was just a decision that I made. And then pretty much from there, like through high school, I had a regular high school experience. I did all the normal things that high school kids do.
Mm,
But it wasn't really until after my parents got divorced and when I mentioned I lived in Colorado
mhm.
is where I really started to like explore my faith. I
Mm,
found myself going to church by myself, like on
interesting.
Sundays, like where, like my whole roommates would just be know, pretty much just completely in another world based off of the events of the night before,
Yeah,
where it's like
yeah.
I find myself at church, and then really like when Kelly and I met, we kind of made it that foundation that we were going to be, that this was going to be kind of like a non-negotiable. This is
Mm,
going to be something that we're going to
awesome.
be that's going to be part of us, moving forward. And so like when the girls were born, Kelly was working at I actually introduced her to the church that I grew up in.
Okay.
She's from here in Nebraska, so that's kind of like why I found myself in Nebraska was because of Kelly. She's from Arlington. She took a student teaching opportunity that was offered in Houston,
Okay.
and that's how we met in Houston. But then
Nice.
eventually moved back here to Nebraska. But like our faith journey has always been pretty much just like this, like stepping stone, I'd say.
Mm,
Kelly has always been, I'd say, the more when you think about spiritual leader of the home, she was kind of more of the spiritual leader starting off, where it was like, we would pray with the kids every single night. We would do devotions every single night. We would make sure that we spent this intentional time. And then over the years, I kind of started to kind of take a little bit more of a role in it.
mm,
I got involved with reading the Bible to the girls, like reading the Gospels, making sure that they understand the story of Jesus Christ,
yeah.
and just like unfolding all of that to them has been really really cool because it's like you also have discovery and all of that. Like, so I experienced a lot of discovery there. Kelly obviously did too, and I think that faith is just one of those things where because of the decisions that Kelly and I have made,
Mm,
because of the sacrifices that we've made with her being a stay-at-home mom and me, being the breadwinner of the home
mhm,
essentially, and just being able to give her that space to where she can be motherly and she can be around them all the time
mm,
has just been exactly what, in my opinion, it's kind of what we're supposed to do. It's
yeah.
kind of like it's like and I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but like it's just like the order of operations that God wants you to have.
Yeah. Yep.
And so we've really tried to like embody that as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And it's been really good. I mean, it's been challenging.
Yeah.
I made a joke with my dad the other day. I was like, "Hey dad, so when is it exactly we start making money? Like, when is it that I'm gonna start having more money?" He's like, "Get rid of those kids and you'll be good to go."
Yeah. Yeah. I love it, and I love that you mentioned that. I do a separate radio show with Grills and I and our pastor called the Eternal Connection. We were just talking this morning about
Cool.
the order that God created things that we see in Genesis 1,
Mhm.
right? And sort of this idea. So first of all, like there's an order, but then also like, the very first day that Adam and Eve existed, their job was to rest,
Mhm.
and like resting in what God had done. And where I'm going with this is we were talking about the number of times that we try to solve things that are really in God's in his domain, right? We try to solve the how questions,
Right.
and that's really where what requires faith, all because we forget that order because sin has entered in and
Mhm.
all of that. And so I love that you mentioned that because I think the like going back to that order that God showed us in Genesis would really help us with a lot of the issues we struggle with as men. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you're dead on. I think that obviously sin is the proponent,
Hmm.
like it's the thing that takes us away from like God's true gift.
Yeah.
Where obviously it started a long, 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 long time ago, but like I think that obviously having the know-how and understanding that unique relationship with Jesus Christ, understanding that like that we can give all of those things to him
Yeah.
and that my kids can give all those things to him and that they have a heavenly father that they can seek whenever they can't seek their own father,
Yeah.
is one of the most important things I think that we could ever present to our kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you mentioned that too, because there's this element, right? And we were talking about this in our Wild at Heart study of just like essentially the question was, well, how can we be, perfect fathers? And the answer
Mhm.
is, well, we can't.
Yeah, you can't.
And
No way.
so then like what we need to do is like model, like I need to repent. I need to seek forgiveness. And by the way, here is God, your father, right? That you need to be building your own relationship with,
Absolutely.
right? It is like, one of the bigger mistakes is if we try to replace God in their lives, which is
Yeah.
hard because we want to do that. But I love it. I would be curious as you think about kind of the other piece of F3, like trying to invigorate male community leadership, right? Which I think it's amazing how all these things overlap and intersect. But Talk us through leadership and some of the opportunities that you've maybe had in F3 or in life. What have you
Mhm.
learned? What sort of advice would you have for guys in the leadership space?
I think in the leadership space, it's all about just like really presenting yourself as a being humbled, almost like
Yeah.
taking a servant role in the sense where it's just like you have to have the ability to serve and to kind of like follow those before you.
Mhm.
So then
Yeah.
leadership is it's not selfish. Can't can't make leadership a thing where it's about, hey, this is going to be all about me. I'm going to use the backs of others to bring me up to the top type deal. Like it can't be that. So I feel like leadership within F3 is really just playing the bottom of just like following the rules of F3.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's like small measures, right? Like it's like when you come into a beatdown and making sure that everybody is kind of like following protocol.
Mhm.
And that's
Yep.
that's what good leadership is.
Mhm.
About making sure that whenever if there's ever times of disagreement or maybe uninvolvement where it's like we are picking up the six, we are following the mantras of F3. Those things are super, super important. And I think the other thing is just being a good friend, like being a good person that people can just like um rely on, that they look forward to seeing. I mean, like leadership within the gloom is super fun because you get to lead workouts, you get to kind of be like that, you get to bring maybe a new idea to a workout, or you get to really maybe have a great conversation because of maybe something that you learned from one of the other guys in the workout.
Mhm.
I know that I've had COTs that have pivoted a ton
Yeah.
just because of what I've heard,
Yeah.
and then how I was just like, what, I'm going to use this. I'm gonna put this into my message somehow. And I don't know. I think leadership is an opportunity. When we think about leadership, we think about the times that we've been led, the times we've been led well, and the times that we haven't been led well.
Mm.
And then we think about if given the opportunity, how would we lead?
Yeah.
Those are the questions I try to ask myself. Like, if I have the opportunity to lead, I'm gonna do my absolute best to lead well. I'm going to give a space to where people can be or I'll be available where they if they need something that I'm available for them. But then I'm also going to give direction and guidance. And I feel leadership is definitely all about direction and guidance.
Yeah. I
Mm.
love it.
Yeah.
It's so cool because I think it's on some level, right? The blueprint is there,
Mhm.
in F3. And then I think like each guy being able to sort of add or build, onto some of that. But I love the direction and guidance piece. I
Yeah.
do think that's where, the guys will sometimes give like khakis a hard time.
Uh-huh.
Right. But when he sort of does that reminder of like, here's how we do cadence, here's how, like that's really powerful,
Yeah.
and I think for men to lead each other that way, that's what happens in my shield lock, right? When I'm saying something or have, something comes up that's not me being accountable, like that's how we do that, right? We
Mhm.
we need to be a little bit stern sometimes with each other because that's as men, I think that's how we kind of learn. And so
Thank goodness for that, right?
yeah,
I mean, like
yeah,
in
yeah,
leadership,
yeah.
the fact you brought up khakis, like think about that guy. Like this is important to him.
Yeah,
He has a passion for it.
yeah.
And when you bring importance into something, it's just like this isn't just like it's not based off of status quo. It's really based off of purpose and intentionality. And so with leadership, it's like really thinking, okay, how can I be highly intentional and how can I be highly purposeful within the things that I'm doing, which is going to help the next guy
Hmm.
come along and hopefully carry that torch, or or eventually carry the flag, right? Because they're going to want to run a site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. This has been so cool. I can't believe how fast I feel like our time has gone by. Just
Hmm.
getting to unpack your story. I think it's really cool. And when I look at you, I think of just an amazing leader, father, husband. It's just so cool to see. And you lead from this space of humility, right? When I think about the times we've been in Q Source together and just your contributions there, and just hearing sort of where you came from and how you got here is just really cool. So I appreciate you coming to share that
Yeah,
with
man.
us. I would be curious, like, is there anything any pieces of your story that we missed or anything that we didn't cover that you want to get off your chest or share with guys that are listening?
I think that's always the beautiful thing about stories, right? Is
Yeah.
that you can always tell another one.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Yes. Looking back at what we talked about is I'm just really happy that that God has given me a place to where I feel that He's truly provided me a place of purpose and intention. And I feel like with F3, I feel like it's going to continue. It's going to be something that's going to continue to grow.
Mm,
I pray that He'll give me a place to where I can help others, maybe in their walks and different things,
yeah.
because like we're all we're kind of we're kind of just in this place where with F3, like how much it's helped us, but then also at the same time, like not as it helped, it's helped us, it's shaped us, but also it doesn't mean that we are finished. Like we
Right.
still need that constant grooming and
Yeah.
growth that it embodies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other than that, I think it went really well. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the
Yeah.
opportunity to lead. I really enjoyed running Q source. I really enjoyed being a site Q. I enjoyed seeing the same guys show up week upon week.
Yeah.
And I look forward to growing with F3 and seeing what that next piece looks like.
Heck yeah. I love it. Last question for you. Just thinking about currently what's going on in life. Where do you need prayers or support? Guys, see out there what's a way we can encourage you?
I think the biggest thing would just to continue just to encourage right now where we are in life with Kelly and me is just with our girls and the teen years and stuff, and just being that
Yeah.
supportive role, but then also understanding that like we also need to kind of give them space.
Yeah.
And so that's been tough. I remember just the other day I was sitting on the couch and I was holding my middle daughter Addie, and she's 14 years old, and I was just thinking to myself like, man, like he's giving me this space right now, but I know eventually she won't. And
Oh,
that's a tough spot to be in, you
yeah.
know?
I've got
Yeah.
3 girls,
Yeah.
much younger. Our oldest is 10, and that's
Yeah.
I will be reaching out to get your guidance
Yeah.
as we're going through those years. That's my biggest fear, but it's inevitable, right?
It is.
And
It is. But it's one of those things where it's just like, life kind of gives you those opportunities where it's like, okay,
yeah,
we can do what we're doing well in this space, then the next space is going to
yeah,
be
yeah.
obviously the right space for them. Yeah,
Good reminder. Hold them while you can.
for sure.
Hold them
100%.
hold them while they'll let you.
Yeah. Well, they let you for
Yeah,
sure.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's do a little Namerama to wrap us up
Awesome.
here. I'll start. Brandon Flehardy, 39, The Plague.
Nice.
Ah,
Brad Boutwell, 46, big unit.
big unit.
Yep.
And what's the call sign? Do we have do we say anything after?
It's kind of funny. I've thought about that. I think it just kind of goes with my humility. I
Yeah.
don't have one yet, but
Yeah.
maybe we'll have to come up with
I
one.
was thinking this wasn't Randy. Randy Johnson didn't really. He was kind of more stoic. I was thinking of Jack McDowell. Do you ever remember that guy? He was a
Yeah.
little more animated.
Oh, yeah,
on
for sure.
on the mound up there. But
Yeah, yeah, he was very animated. There's a couple of guys, but yeah, I don't know. I've always liked that piece.
Yeah.
I've always liked that part about
big
me.
unit.
Yeah.
Just keep it humble. I
Yeah.
love it. Well, I appreciate you, brother.
Awesome, man. Thanks.
Scars on our hands, hope in our chest. We're not defined by the weight of the test. Brothers in step, we carry the flame. Different roads, but the heart beats the same. Every man's got a story to tell. From the valley low to the mountaintop, yeah. Every man's got a story inside. Standing strong, we won't hide. Every man, yeah. Every man's got a story. We've been broken, we've been bruised, but we rise again and we don't get to choose. Through the fire, through the fight, every man's story burns in the night. Scars on our hands, hope in our chest. We're not defined by the weight of the test. Brothers in step, we carry the flame. Different roads, but the heart beats the same. On a story to tell, from the valley low to the mountaintop, yeah. Every man's got a story inside. Different roads, but the heart beats the same. Every man's got a story to tell. From the valley low to the mountaintop, yeah. Every man's got a story inside. Standing strong, we won't hide. Every man, yeah, every man's got a story. Every man's got a story. Chains may rattle, but they break in time. Every man's story is yours and mine. From the struggle to the glory, every man's got a story. In the dark or in the light, we keep marching through the night. Every man's got a story inside. Every man's got a story to tell. From the valley low to the mountaintop hill, every man to the mountaintop hill. Every man's got a story inside. Standing strong, we won't hide.